probably 1, 2, 3, 4.
I'm starting the
It's
video.
probably the last house. Yes, the last house.
The video's on right
The
now.
last house on the left-hand side, going east.
Okay.
Up the hill. So you're going up the hill, right? Yeah, it kind of curves a little bit. It's the second to last house, 2 stories. They usually have a big motor home. It's crazy. Very nice house. You know, I think about it.
I'm gonna start this recording.
Yeah. They're bigger chairs because they're more muscle. I can't believe we're all here. Hey, Matt, you know how to act, Matt? We're all here, Matt.
I'd like to call the Superior County Planning and Zoning Commission to order. All stand for Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Invocation. Dear Lord, please help this town keep developing and growing, and the town officials and all the employees of the town keep themselves safe and healthy, and take care of all the citizens of the town of Superior. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, roll call. Henry Munoz.
Here.
Thank you, Sarah.
Here.
Sharon Fedor. Here. Jesse Garcia.
Here.
David Gunn.
Here.
Joy Edlund.
Here.
Matt Matshop. Here. We have a full document this time.
You better get along.
Consent agenda, approval of minutes of planning and zoning meeting on January 6, 2022.
So moved. I read it.
Okay, motion made by Hank and Terrace to approve the minutes of planning and zoning meeting January 6th. Do I hear a second?
I second it.
Seconded by Joy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries to approve minutes of planning and zoning meeting on January 6, 2022. New public hearing, discussion, possible approval of resolution number 2022-02, a resolution of the Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Superior recommending to the Superior Town Council to adopt amendment to the general plan.
Recording in progress.
Good. All right, good evening. Thank you all so much for having me. My name is Amy Geringer. I work with a firm called Kinley Horn, and we have been working with the town to support the update of the Superior General Plan. And so tonight I'm looking forward to kind of walking through at a high level, but with some detail, what the current draft general plan update is. Just as a note right now, that document is available on the town website in draft form for public comment. And we will be looking today from you all for any questions you might have and ways that maybe this plan might be improved before going to council in March. Right, we'll work on getting, I seem to have
Go ahead and try now.
bad luck with the clicker. Todd and I have been battling the clicker for 2 weeks. Should I take?
Shall I take the mouse, or do you want me to just say next?
It's started working for the mouse. I don't know. It doesn't work.
Oh,
There it goes. All
There we
right.
go. Let's see if I get it. Wonderful. What would we do without Todd? All right. So I wanted to just provide a little bit of background about the purpose of a general plan and what we're really looking to accomplish with this effort. So a general plan is it's a vision document. It's a 20-year vision for the town. The goal of the general plan is not necessarily to reinvent a lot of things, but instead aggregate, kind of have a home for a lot of the activities that are already going on, while also maybe filling in some gaps related to some of the other required elements of a general plan that maybe haven't had that much attention. So the general plan is testing. Ooh, that sounded better. All right. So the general plan is a tool. It's really meant to be a tool or a guide for the town, for town management, for town council to make decisions and kind of make recommendations for investment that the town's going to make as we grow and develop. And so you'll see in here that there's a lot of things that are recommendations, and there'll be recommendations for studies or recommendations for policies, but this certainly is a recommendation document, and there's a lot of things in here that are good practices, and but it's really up to the town on how they best use this document for their purposes. And it's really working to provide a framework to guide decision making as development occurs. And so this document isn't dictating any development, and I'll get to that a couple of times, but it is supposed to be a tool to help make decisions when development opportunities are in front of the town. So a general plan is actually a document that is required by state statute. So all municipalities in the state of Arizona are required to have a general plan, and it's something that needs to be updated at a minimum every 10 years. And so there is some specifics as to what needs to be included in the general plan, and that is all based off of the Arizona revised statutes. So I wanted to provide just a little overview of what this general plan that we've developed for the town, the organization we've chosen. This organization does meet all the criteria and requirements of the Arizona revised statutes. But there is some flexibility in how you organize things and how you and the different things that are called, the different elements and what they're called based off of what is going to work best for the town. And so this is how we've worked with the town staff and some of our steering committee members who are here today on organizing this plan. All right, so in any good planning exercise, a plan needs to be rooted in a vision or a set of visions for the future. And this is going to be how the plan is developed, and a lot of the recommendations are kind of guided by addressing these various visions. And so there's going to be a lot of text, and I'm not going to read all the text, but I'll kind of hit on the key points of some of these visions. These are ones that certainly should not be a surprise to anyone, because they're really supposed to embody the things that the town and its citizens are the deep-rooted things that we need to guide. And so hopefully these have been vetted, and hopefully these all resonate with you as well. So the first one is related to being resilient and versatile. And so this one looks at this idea of resilience in public spaces, in the economy, in the infrastructure that the town invests in, and in the processes, the decision-making processes that the town puts in place to help make decisions. The second vision related to vibrant and welcoming. This is really looking at this aspect of creating this kind of community, not just for residents and visitors, but not for current resident visitors, but future residents and future visitors. We're really looking at that 20-year time frame. So this vision is really around activities and attractions, housing, businesses that create this vibrant and welcoming community. So vision 3 is related to a town that's supported and connected. And so this is supported and connected looking at our student and younger population, looking generally at residents and supporting them and their development and connecting residents. And also just a connected and supported network of infrastructure. And so both looking at people and infrastructure related to this vision. And then finally, this vision of local and historic character. And it's what we've heard loud and clear as part of this process is that this is something that is rooted in this community and needs to be maintained. And we really, in fact, need to double down on it, especially as growth and development presents itself here. And so it's really keeping and bolstering the community identity that's already really well established here in Superior. So these 4 visions are things that really were weaved throughout our whole process, and as we walk through some of the recommendations, hopefully you'll see how some of these were weaved into this. So we wanted to provide a little bit of input before we dove into recommendations just around the community engagement that we've been able to do as part of this process, and obviously that was one of the pillars of some of those the vision development that we went through. And so we had what we call stakeholder involvement, so kind of a subset of the larger public. And so we did a set of stakeholder interviews, partnering with the town and some of our other steering committee members to identify a subset of folks who we did specific interviews with to really understand perspective of what's important to preserve, what's important that we maybe need to be looking at differently as we develop this document. And so you see the list of representation that we had from those stakeholder interviews. We also had a steering committee, which I've already referenced a couple of times, and so this was one that we wanted to get a good cross-section of folks. So we had folks from this committee, we had folks from the community development committee, and we also had members of council. And so being able to bring together that steering committee to support and kind of provide oversight into some of the processes related to this general plan. So then the second facet of community and stakeholder engagement is related to public engagement. And so right now we're in our second round where we're doing these public meetings and providing different opportunities to get feedback on the draft general plan. But prior to this, we did do another round of feedback gathering, and it was in the form of a digital survey. But it was also available in hard copy form, so we wanted to make sure it was highly accessible. And so I wanted to provide just a little bit of feedback that we've heard from that public survey. And before I get into some of the specific feedback, I wanted to emphasize that we actually got really excellent response. For a community of this size, and we had about 85 responses, which is outstanding because sometimes we get that many in a community much, much larger. And so I was really, it really was nice to see how engaged this community is in its future. So looking at some of the questions that we asked in the survey, it was really around, what are the things that as we look into the future, we really want to preserve? What are the things that are important and kind of part of the foundation of the town? And so the things we heard from folks there are around the natural land, the town's history, and really that small town feel. And so as we saw, those were pretty well reflected in some of those visions, and certainly things that I'm sure resonate with everyone. Some of these items, we asked questions just around what are the things that you'd like to see different, where maybe some different investments need to be put in as we look to the future. And so a lot of the feedback that we got was related to the condition of roadways, just generally the condition and the amount of housing is something we heard, businesses, and then general aesthetics. And general aesthetics are things like weeds and sidewalk conditions and graffiti and that kind of thing. And so those were generally what we heard as some of the things that bubbling up at the top of just around things that we might be able to change or improve. And then just some of the other findings we wanted to share just related to this first public survey. We asked questions just around where should the town make investments as we move forward and as we grow and develop. And so what we really heard loud and clear was wanting to make investments in the existing neighborhoods. And so understanding that there's going to be growth, but everyone also sees a real need to continue to invest in the existing residents, the existing neighborhoods that we have. The other one that we heard frequently is really investing in downtown. And then just the final one we wanted to share, it was very specific, related to like a housing question. And so we asked a question around, what type of housing should we be investing in over the next 20 years? And what we heard here, that the top two related to single family housing and then mixed uses. And so I think there were a couple other items just related to public survey I did want to provide some context on. The way that we did this survey, while I said it was digital, there was also hard copies. And we did a pretty robust advertising. We've advertised through the newspaper multiple times. We advertised through Facebook. We advertised through flyers. So we've tried to get the word out there. We did also hold, so one of the things, when we did get the feedback, and we were really happy with that, but we noticed that we didn't have quite as good representation from some of the younger folks. And so some of the town staff were able to partner to do a youth focus group. And so that was one thing that we did include in part of this. And so it wasn't as well, it's not as well represented in some of these graphs, but it was weaved into all the other recommendations and some of those visions, because obviously that younger generation is really important when we're thinking that's 20 years out. Before I go on, are there any questions related to any of this initial information about stakeholder or public feedback?
When you guys interviewed the youth, was it a certain grade level or age level? What was that?
So it was the youth council, so it was a decently diverse, I guess.
High school?
It was mostly high school.
You know the youth council.
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
This may be a little off topic, but presumably there's a general plan that has been in place already.
Correct.
And you've capitalized on that document to produce this one.
We have, in ways that were most prudent. One of the major reasons that the town is looking to update the general plan right now is because the current general plan is not providing the realistic expectations for growth and so that it was looking at population projections that were way off the mark, and obviously with some things like the annexation, there's just been a lot of change. And so while we made sure to pull out the pieces that were relevant and we worked with folks to identify those, this is a pretty decent overhaul in it, because we heard that there was not a lot of there was a lot of things that needed to be improved by that to make it useful.
So with a 20-year horizon and updated every 10 years, presumably there's 10 years left on the existing general plan. I was wondering what didn't get accomplished in the past 10 years that we wanted to get accomplished.
I think that it's less about what didn't get accomplished and more about the assumptions that were used in developing that last plan were just, they did not come to fruition, and it really made it a challenging plan to use because we were looking at population projections and other things that were just far beyond what we actually are seeing right now.
The population projection for Town of Superior by 2025 is 25,000 people. So if you base your plan on some flawed assumptions from the start, it becomes fairly useless as you start to really factor it out in the distance.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong, Todd, wasn't our last one just a minor?
We did a minor update in 2017.
Okay.
The plan was originally drafted in 2003. It was updated in 2009 and again in 2017. So it is quite a long-tooth plan. It really desperately needed a complete overhaul.
Yeah.
And towards the end, I'll talk a little bit about that process, but it certainly, there is the intention that those amendments and updates do get made. This is not supposed to be a stagnant document, but every 10 years is really when you need to kind of really take a good look and decide if do you need that full overhaul or what kind of refreshing needs to get done. So that type of updating is actually healthy and very good, and it should be going on.
I was surprised development should not be encouraged was up to 13%.
Yeah, you know, it's an interesting community. There's folks here who come here because they want to be away, and then there's folks here
Like
who are
this
so
way.
excited to share. And so it is. It's certainly there's folks on both ends of the spectrum. And I think what we need to do, and really the goal of this plan was to help the town manage the growth. And so we want growth, but we want to also be able to kind of manage it and proactively manage it so that it's done in a way that continues to kind of allow Superior to be that small town that folks like it to be while still being able to grow and develop. Any other questions?
No, all I said, that when we did the last one, we had no idea we'd be annexing this much land, so this was.
That's another great point. Yeah. There was a lot of good triggers to the timing of updating the general plan right now. So it was certainly a good time to do it. All right, so I'm going to spend a bulk of my time, the rest of my time with you on the land use component. That's the one that in any general plan, that's the real meat. That's the one that has the most visuals and things to work with. And so I'm going to spend the most time here and then go through some of the other elements at a little bit less detail, and certainly I can field questions, but just to preempt that. So the way that the general plan is organized is that each section, each of those elements, we start with an existing conditions discussion, just around what things look like right now. Then we go into looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and constraints, and then we look at recommendations, and so that's how I'm going to present a lot of these. So this first one here is just a very high level. There's much more detail around some of these opportunities and challenges in the actual plan, but I wanted to just highlight a few. So related to opportunities and challenges, obviously with the annexation and the amount of land that's now available, that's an opportunity, and that's a great reason why we're looking at some of this right now. Also, just there's a lot of the infill, right? Properties that already are part of the original town boundary that could be redeveloped, and there's a lot of potential with that. And so both of those really create a lot of opportunity when it comes to land use. Some of the challenges in the existing conditions, housing diversity, and I don't think that's surprising to anyone, and that's what we heard a lot from the public too, is really need not just more housing, but more diverse types of housing. This idea of the housing and employment balance. And so do we have the housing that for folks who are going to work here and vice versa? And so making sure that there's a balance between the types of housing and the price point of housing and the folks who are working or who want to work in the Superior. And then the last challenge just to highlight is that even though we do have a lot of available land, right now there is a challenge because the town doesn't own a lot of that. And I know there are steps being taken, and which is excellent, but that is right now kind of a challenge, a little bit of a constraint. And so another element as part of this land use and housing chapter is that we did look specifically at what is that projected housing need. And so we, through this, and I mean, this is small, but there is a projection with population projection and some of the development projections of needing more than 1,000 new housing units of all different kinds. And so that's something that was an important driver into some of the recommendations, both from a land use perspective and from a housing perspective. So I have a couple of kind of slides to preempt before I show a map. And so wanting to just make sure that we understand the uses of a land use map as part of the general plan. And so when we look at the map is going to suggest a land use for the entirety of the now much larger annexed area. And it's not looking at specifically just town-owned parcels, or so it is looking, because we need to be able to put in a land use and make sure that there's compatible uses. And so there's going to be a land use designation for all of the land within the now town planning area. Land uses that we're going to suggest are not zoning. And so one item coming out of this general plan is that there may be a need to look at the zoning code and make sure that it's going to be reflecting the general plan, assuming that it is supported and adopted. But within a land use, there's many zoning types that could be identified as part of a larger land use. And so in the general plan, there is some specific guidance on, in this land use, here's the type of different zoning or different types of kind of more specific uses. So for example, an area that's zoned as medium density residential, we would expect to have things like neighborhood scale commercial or parks or civic uses. And so it's not something that says residential doesn't mean that it's only houses and there's no other types of uses. And so that's an important kind of qualifier as we look at land use planning. The final note here, and I've said this once and I told you I'd say it a few times, the land use designation on that map does not mean that there's impending development. Right, the tool and this map specifically is a planning tool to help make decisions and help guide development. And so when we're suggesting a certain type of land use, that doesn't mean that there's any development coming in tomorrow saying this is what I'm going to build, but instead it's kind of providing the town that opportunity to make sure that when there are opportunities for development, they can look at the land use map and say, is that compatible with where our vision is for it? So just a couple of other items just related to the land use map. There are some new land use suggestions that we put into this, and this is this is normal, right? Where the town got much bigger, there's a lot different opportunities, and so there was some need to really consider some different kind of land uses beyond what was provided in the initial general plan. And so those are the ones I'm going to be highlighting today. New land uses doesn't necessarily mean that there's new zoning, but it is reasons to kind of think through what might be the possible zoning implications with some of these different land uses. And then there is one other item here that I'll talk a little bit more, where there's a recognition in this plan that there's going to be more detailed master planning for portions of this larger the now larger planning area. The general plan is not going to get to the certain specification of saying, okay, within this larger development, right here's where a park needs to go, and right here is where the collector streets need to go. There's an element of master planning that as development, as people come in and want to do things, some of these sub areas are going to have to be master planned, and that's the function of the general plan is to provide that higher level guidance, but there will need to be more details around specific development and master planning. All right. So here is the proposed land use map as part of the general plan. And so, like I said, I'm focusing mostly on the new land use designations that we're recommending as part of this. But a lot of them still are some of the traditional ones that the town is already using. And so the two here, so I'll start with the gray because I just spoke about this. And so anything in that kind of gray hatching, so anything that has that horizontal line, or it's a diagonal line, are those areas where we suggest a land use, but because of the lack of anything there right now and just the how long-term some of that development might be, those are the areas where that kind of master planning needs to happen. And so in order for the general plan to be a document that can provide a 20-year vision and have that staying power for at least the 10 years, if we put a road network right now, or if we put specific parts, it's going to be wrong, and we don't want that for the general plan. So those areas are ones where generally we identify the land use. That should help with making some of those more specific site development decisions. The other one on this slide is related to Main Street commercial. And so we certainly have commercial land uses right now, but we thought it was really important just with the momentum behind Main Street and the value that folks put on Main Street, and the downtown area, that we thought there should be a specific land use that really supports the kind of development that people are envisioning for downtown. And so you'll see that obviously is very specific to the Main Street area, but we do think there's value in having a specific type of land use for that area. So the other two designations that I wanted to walk through a little bit, so this darker red related to highway commercial. And so this is a new land use that really looks at opportunities to better connect the US 60 to the downtown. And there's going to be land uses that will support some of that higher vehicular traffic volumes. And so we are looking at some of these areas that if we could do a land use such as what we're calling highway commercial, it can really help provide that connectivity, both because a lot of that visual and the land uses will support the connectivity between the US 60 and the Main Street. And then the last one here in this purple is related to what we're calling employment center. And so one of the big things that we heard and engaged a lot with as we went through this general plan update is the opportunities that are arising from this annexation to really try and encourage new employers and things, especially along the US 60, and also especially with the airport. And so looking at some of the recent efforts around the airport master plan, around some of the economic development strategies, and so providing a land use that supports the type of development and uses that we want to see along there, really for employers to have a place that not only people can work, but that they can go and have lunch, and they can also potentially live nearby. It's a really attractive way to start trying to attract those types of uses and employers. And so we are suggesting this new land use, especially along that US 60 frontage. Are there any questions in the land use map or some of these different designations that we're proposing?
I've got a question on the employment thing.
Sure.
What are those diagonal slashes?
Yeah, so the diagonal slashes is that area that we said it needs that kind of more further refinement around, so more further master planning.
The one with the dark purple, that one's already developed pretty much. So either that one's already like commercialized, or the one with its
That's
purple.
the area around Emirates.
Yeah. It's already like the industrialized already.
So I think because we're looking at how to tie the vision into, so it doesn't need to change what it currently is,
right,
but more that there may be the opportunity that if there's turnover, if there's changes, these are the kind of uses that may be considered for this kind of area. And so I think the industrial uses can work, but as opportunities arise that it might change, it would be looking at a more mixed use rounded area than just industrial.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm happy to take questions afterwards as well. So as I noted, the way that we were working through this is that we do provide objectives and some recommended strategies as part of this, working towards achieving those various visions. And so I wanted to just be able to define some of these terms before we dug into them. So an objective is really, for each of these elements, each of these chapters, an objective is looking at how we translated those visions into that specific element. And so it's the way that we look at being versatile and being welcoming and being vibrant. You'll see some of that is how we translate it into some of these objective statements. And then underneath each objective is a set of example strategies. And there are quite a few. And so certainly today when I go through them, I'll highlight the objectives, but I'm just going to give a sampling of some of the example strategies, but there's a much more robust amount in the actual draft plan. The other thing that I do want to identify here is that a lot of the example strategies are things that the town's already doing. or they're things that have already been a recommendation as part of a recent study or plan. And so they're not necessarily all brand new things that no one has thought about, and suddenly there's all these recommendations that are being put on the town, but instead, again, it's just a way to kind of aggregate and organize things as part of this plan. So specific to the land use, housing, and development chapter, and the white does not show up very well, I apologize there. But the objectives here related to, so this first one says support neighborhood affordability and stability. And so under that objective in the plan, there's a whole variety of strategies on how the town might be able to go about doing that. The second, strengthen Superior's commercial corridors. We see a lot of that, including some of the land use designations that we're recommending. The third here, encourage development that is compatible with existing uses and the needs and visions of the town. And so again, that's the whole point of land use planning, as well as, of course, the zoning code, is supporting compatibility of uses and making sure that we're providing safe and compatibility between parcels that are next to each other. And then the last one, prepare for future increases in demand for public spaces and infrastructure. And so we all know with the annexation, there is going to be need for new roadways and new water and sewer infrastructure and those things. And so really just around some strategies to best be ready for making some of those investments. So that is mostly what I wanted to talk today about land use. Are there any questions before I move on to some of the other elements? Very good. All right, so the next chapter is on transportation. Obviously, transportation and land use are things that go hand in hand, and if you're gonna be successful in one, you have to have the other. So the transportation element is important. So just again, looking at some of these opportunities and challenge. Right now, the transportation system provides good access to the town, to the different neighborhoods, to the different amenities. There is good access right now. The airport is an opportunity for sure. There's a lot of documentation and work just around what the future of the airport could bring to the town, and so that we see as an opportunity. And then right now, because of the good access and because there's not a lot of congestion, there's not a lot of crashes relatively. And so yes, of course, there's always going to be some, but really that's right now kind of an opportunity or a strength of the network. Some of the challenges specific to transportation, just ongoing maintenance. The town has done a really good job recently of trying to address, especially some of the pavement. And so I think that the thing there is it's always going to need maintenance, and that's just a challenge. And especially as we expand in the town's footprint, there's going to be more things to maintain. Some other challenges just around specifically crossing the US 60, we've heard that quite a bit, just in both safety and just the connectivity for Superior, that making sure that both the areas south and the areas north stay connected is really important. And generally, just specifically for the transportation system, managing growth and making sure that the investments are made, or that the proper costs are shared as growth and development occurs, because it can very quickly, whether it's infrastructure degradation or having a lot of more vehicles or more trucks or those kinds of things, might be the result of growth. And so there are things we just want to make sure we stay ahead of. Excuse me. So here's our transportation objectives and just some example strategies. And so I'll read the objectives because I know it's not easy to read there. So the first one, have a process for prioritizing and implementing transportation specific projects. And so this is something I think recently, especially that some of the pavement work that's been implemented, but generally, especially as things grow, it's going to be important to be able to identify your needs, have a established process to identify needs and prioritize them as funding becomes available. The second is ensure adequate funding to address transportation priorities. And so this kind of goes in hand that you not only need the process, but of course, having and planning for the right funding to address priorities. Third, here, create a safe, accessible, and connected multimodal transportation network. And so one thing that will be important there, and multimodal in the way we define it here is really looking at enabling not just driving but also walking and biking. And we do include in here some recommendations specific to transit, because that is something we heard a few times just from various folks around. You know, there isn't, if you don't drive, how do you get to your doctor's appointment that might be in the Phoenix metro area, or different kind of ways to provide public transportation or some supportive transportation for folks that don't have a vehicle. And then the fourth here, plan and prepare to address future circulation demand resulting from development. And so this one is considering plans and policies and standards for making sure that we can manage and kind of drive the type of transportation network you want to see, rather than just accept what the development might be. Any questions or clarifications related to transportation that you get? Okay, so open space is the next element here, and so looking at some of the strengths and challenges, I think in general, open space is a strength here, but there's been a lot of investment and there's a lot of energy around that. But some of the challenges related to open space that we saw is that some of the infrastructure, there could be improvements in kind of that flexibility, that multi-purpose of park and other civic infrastructure, as well as just generally needing to kind of have a plan or some standards for being able to expand parks. So especially as some of those areas, like the residential areas, might grow or be developed, making sure there's a plan in place so that those parks do get put in by development or that kind of thing, and so that we're not leaving big areas that don't have a lot of that recreation space. So related to the open space objectives, the first one, identify and plan for future parks, as I just noted. Protect the environmental resources that support natural and park open space. The third here, refresh amenities in existing parks and open spaces. And then the fourth, connect Superior and surrounding regional and national natural open spaces and trails. And I think that's a good example of one that the town's doing really well right now, and it's just important to document and continue on that momentum. Okay, the next element here is about environment and water. And so I think what we saw is there is a really strong and proactive management of a lot of this right now. There's been a lot of conservation around, or I'm sorry, a lot of planning around conserving these resources, especially with a lot of the environmental impact statements and things. The town's been very active and very proactive around those. But generally, it's just hard. As you grow and develop, there's a lot of challenges around making sure that you conserve these resources. But it's particularly important here because that is one of the big draws and one of the things that is in Foundation of Superior. So objectives for open space or environment and water: mitigate flooding and stormwater impacts, mitigate impacts to the natural environment, support the water and sewer infrastructure to accommodate current and new resident needs, and allocate the cost of water and sewer expansion between the town of Superior and developers. And so there's a few things in here that are already being done really well, and we should keep doing them. That last one's probably the little bit of a different one, of really some strategies on how to set the town up so that as development does come, it's not all on the town to be providing some of the expansion or service upgrades to services that are required. All right. Economic and community development. This is another one. There's been a lot of work done around this, and so the general plan here is really looking to aggregate it. We're not overriding any of the recent work related to economic strategies or tourism, and so you'll see a lot of things that are hopefully pretty familiar. So some of the opportunities, just generally that we've been saying, there is interest and there's a lot of attractive features about Superior for both economic and just general, I guess, attracting both businesses and residents. But some of the challenges, especially when we're thinking about the economy, is just uncertainty. And I think Superior has a specific level of uncertainty just with with some of the mining opportunities and not really, there isn't a clear path, especially as we were working through this document, and so needing to just make sure we're adaptable and flexible. Some of the others, the opportunities and challenges are similar to some of the land uses, just around housing supply and the need for more shovel-ready sites for businesses and folks to come in. So some of our economic and community development objective, create a diverse economy to attract residents and visitors, encourage the development and retention of local talent, support the development of Superior as a recreation destination, and maintain housing affordability so that existing and new residents can live in Superior. One of the other things that we talked about actually in the Community Development Committee is that while it seems like sometimes we talk about the mining opportunities as more of a challenge, there really is an opportunity related to that too, and making sure that if the town can be proactive and stay in front of it and make it something that is investing in the town rather than just taking from the town. And so I liked that point, and I did want to share that, and that's something we will be making sure to address in the actual document before it goes to council. Any questions? All right, and then I'm not going to spend very much time on this last one. This is one of these required elements, but it's not a very exciting read. It's a pretty long list of a lot of different financing and funding opportunities to do a lot of this different stuff. And so the objective here, this first one that I've touched on before, just making sure development pays its fair share of the cost of new or expanded public services. Ensure funding and installation of appropriate infrastructure, promote redevelopment that maximizes the use of town facilities, and so that's an important one because there has already been investments, and let's make the best use of the investments we already have, in addition to obviously needing to make new investments. And encouraging new business developments in locations adjacent to commercial and industrial land. And so again, that's the idea of infill and just the efficiencies of being able to actually fill in parcels that are already served by things like roads and water. So as I noted at the beginning, we just have a quick discussion here on updating or implementing and updating the plan. And so I wanted to emphasize that this is a plan, right? The function of a plan is documenting these visions and recommendations to kind of be able to at this time what makes sense towards achieving those visions, but things change, and we saw that from the previous general plan that there were certain assumptions, and those changed, and it required changes to this plan. And so we did as much as we could to be able to make a lot of the strategies and things in here adaptable as things change, knowing there is a lot going on and there is some uncertainty in that. But as we also noted, this should be kind of I'm sure we hear the term like living document, right? It's something that we want to be able to engage with and not have it go stagnant. And so it's okay that things might change. That the plan can change, the land uses can change, just like we do the same process for if zoning needs to change. And so that process is good and should happen, and we should be engaging with it to see, we did our best guess for right now in 2022 and 2021, but things are going to change in that 5-10 years, and so we should, there are processes, and it should be encouraged that it's okay to engage and update this plan. So just some quick next steps. We do have our council presentation on March 10th. And as I noted earlier, the full draft plan is currently available on the planning and zoning page in the plans and studies link. There's also some printed copies here. And we will be posting this presentation as well as a recording of this presentation so that folks can watch it. It's also streaming right now. And we are excited to get feedback so that we can make some final plan updates and go to council. Are there any additional questions I can answer?
This draft is still changeable at
Yes.
this point, and you're looking for continued input.
I am, yes, I'm
From,
certainly
from,
looking.
from this committee and me as a private citizen?
Yes.
Okay.
And we're gonna be adding on some opportunity, like adding ways to provide feedback digitally. We can always also take emails and things, but we'll be putting up. But yes, we are looking for feedback, and we always welcome positive feedback, but certainly if there are things that you feel like are not quite right or don't feel quite right, we are certainly in the stage where this is draft, and we're hoping that we can get it right in the next about month.
I've got a comment. I just, for the commissioners, you know, as part of the work group, when we put this together, it kind of amazes me that how you can take all that information, which I felt like we couldn't really tie it together. We've done a really good job of capturing all that work, and I had my doubts. And there's a lot, I know there was a lot of feedback going back and forth, and I just want to thank you and the town, the manager, you know, for going through this effort, because I think it is a reflection of all that work, and it really summarizes it with a very intuitive when you read this. And for me personally, I think it fits.
Thanks for that feedback, and thank you for
Is
your
that positive
efforts.
enough?
That was great. And thank you and the other folks here, Jesse and Matt and Hank for.
I've been involved in other general plan updates, and you made it so much, it just seems so much simpler than what I've been through before.
Well, I'm so glad. Yes.
You know you did good when it's not painful for us.
Just as a procedural thing, this is a public hearing, so we do have to make sure that anyone from the public who would like to address the committee can.
Any other questions?
I guess a sort of a schedule question.
Sure.
I don't know if Todd, you're looking for an approval today or next month for this plan as written, but it sounds like we're still in the process of changing it possibly. So are we looking for a recommendation to council tonight or next month, or?
The council, the commission can choose to make a recommendation to the council tonight if you choose, or you can do it at your next scheduled meeting. This is a required posted public hearing. Planning and Zoning Commission is required to approve it before it goes to council. That's one of the statutory requirements. If you choose to hear it at your next meeting, it is before the next council meeting that we're planning to adopt this. So you could choose to table this until the next meeting. That would be acceptable.
I got a question, Chair.
Yes.
I kind of feel like, I'm not sure if we should delay this. I mean, for me personally, I can't see anything that would change between now and next month.
Well, I'm pretty much in agreement with you.
Well, if this committee recommends to as is to the council, then can it be changed?
So I think the idea of minor text edits are things that, yes, that we can do that, and that will make a difference. If we feel like there's going to be things that significantly need to be changed, then I would say we would need to redo the process and
The plan itself, the plan itself says that it's adaptive, so it's a living document, so
Right.
it can be changed, anytime by different code, different land use, changes or whatever.
Mhm. Yep.
So
There's certainly minor
it's a-
revisions or even major
It's an
revisions.
adaptive, so it's good, for me, it's good to go forward. I recommend it go forward.
I have a question for the manager. Knowing that this is a general plan, that when is this gonna tie into a master plan? Is that in process, or is that when does that come about?
I'm not sure the vernacular of a master plan. Master plans are generally, if you have a community and you want to plan that one community, you develop a master plan for that community.
Okay.
The general plan is by definition generalized. So it is the rough set of guidelines that we're going to apply to any master plan we put in our community. And any zoning changes, while it's not a zoning document, they do have to sort of conform to the general plan suggestions.
And the reason I asked that, because with the what do you call it, when we accumulate all the rest of this land, there's a lot of opportunities for development, and it would seem to me, maybe not here, but we should start focusing on that, you know.
And there is a lot of work going on that front, which, and we have started building the partners. We're still waiting for the land transfer to be initiated by the federal government. So timing is uncertain, but a lot of the general plan is going to be dependent on what sort of investment partners we bring to the table. So I can say that I want to put 15 miles of road and 20 miles of new sewer line, but I can't pay for that. So we need to get a developer on board, and there are companies, there are organizations like CPLC by contract is going to be assisting us to develop a plan for that property, and it will involve a lot of public engagement as well. So, but this is just a much more generalized for the entire town document.
Anybody else? Okay, do we have to take a vote to close the meeting? To open up public?
Well, we still haven't opened it up to members of the public, so we need to do that, and then
Okay.
after that, we could close the public hearing.
Okay, I'm gonna open up, the
Thank
meeting to public comment.
Hi, my name is Maria Salcido. I am a resident of Superior. I also, family's part of this. I'm also the chair-elect for WeServe, which is the Board of Realtors. I'm actually the one in charge of Pinal County. So this is a 20-year plan that we are looking at here. So I'm going to take myself out of being a resident of just Superior and look at all of Pinal County at this point. Pinal County right now is getting ready to build the interchange and the new infrastructure coming in from this area going out towards I-11. So Coolidge is having some development going on, as you well know. John Thompson, who's actually from Superior in this area as well, he's doing his development. We have several new communities going in Santan, Gold Canyon, AJ, and we are 40 minutes, not even 40 minutes from those areas. So when we look at a 20-year plan of Superior, we've annexed property, we are looking at new development for this area and creating actual homes for people to commute to those jobs that are coming in. Here we're talking close to 5,000 jobs. So with us being part of that corridor, us being part of that new gateway coming in, what happened to light rail or some type of community travel? And I know that that's a lot of money, and we've talked about that. But we also know within the budget of the state, there's grant money given. We have an old rail system that we can kind of connect to, new infrastructure coming in, which would actually bring a lot of tourists to this area who don't want to drive it. So with I-11, the new infrastructure, the new communities coming in, the bottom of the footprint, we have to start really looking at that. Might not be today, but in 20 years, that's a very large portion, and that's what we're kind of looking at here between now and 20 years. So before I think we look at, approving something completely, maybe we look at some type of transportation, even though we didn't hit that too much today, but we start looking at the grant money that the federal government's willing to give for that, the grant money that the state's willing to give for that. There was just more grant money that other communities have received here in the state of Arizona. I know that WeServe, which is the board, is willing to help you with grant writing for that and start putting things in place that we need for that. Maybe it's just a study that is done for the community that we're able to look at that, or maybe they've already done that. I don't know. I haven't been a part of those communities, but I do know that Pinal County right now, with us being the gateway to Kearney, and we have Hayden, and we have Winkleman, all of those areas, Globe Miami, coming in from the White Mountains, we're a central location here to where we have to really look at what's going to be happening for transportation going into those areas for development. So maybe just think about those things. Also, I guess I'm just asking, something on behalf of another client of mine along Main Street. I was looking at some of this. There's Arnold's, which is, the old car dealership, and then the big empty lot. Well, Brian Hatch had already had approved for some little homes to go in there, but I'm seeing that that's more of a commercial site. I'm still hoping his little homes could go in there. You know, this is something we've been trying to create for a little while now, and then COVID happened and then other things. But he's in process of getting his funding put together to where he can start building probably, you know, July or August of this year. So, you know, I know that looking at those things that have already been approved, to have them to still go forward, because that will create 20 homes for people, different family sizes, going in there. Also, you know, making sure that, I know Canal, they said that there was the community commercial piece on there. You know, the bakery's there. You know, the bakery's been there forever. I understand it's not open today, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to reopen. It just means right now the economic side of it is not functional for my family, because I own it. But that doesn't mean that it's not going to open, and it doesn't mean that it's not already licensed to do something there if we want to reopen it. So, and I know it's on here as being approved already for that little area, but you know, those are the little areas we're talking about that have already been in existence for the community here. Other than that, I just really would like you to look more at the transportation side and figuring in what's going to happen, because those jobs, those people want to still live in this area or come visit in this area. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can we respond to it?
Thank you.
I totally agree with everything you said, and from where I sit, everything that you said has actually been taken in consideration. Even with the light rail, one of the things that we worked on, I'm part of the community working group with resolution, and the rail system has come up extensively, and there's limitations on that currently. And from my point of view, the life of that, whether we can pull a genie out of the hat, that rail is not going to be available to us probably for 40 years. I'm not saying it's something might happen between now and then, but I think I'm familiar with growth, especially the way it's happened in East Valley, West Valley, all throughout the metropolitan cities. I've actually seen it. And I really think rail is going to be an option, but it's probably going to be 40 to 50 years out. So I think we've always talked about rail, so I don't think we've ever excluded that. And I think we all have a clear understanding that we are the gateway, we're a main transportation corridor a gateway between the east and going south. It's like I've always said that Superior is going to lay the groundwork that's going to, what we do today in Superior is actually going to affect Globe, Kearney, and everybody going south. So with the improvement of the highway, the current expansion that's going to go up in the canyon, I think those are all elements. I don't think by any chance, none of us, we're all aware of that. So I look at the plan, 20 years, this is a very good starting point, and I don't think none of us are taking any of the things that you brought up for granted, because we understand that. So I appreciate it, because my concern too is with the new corridor, the I-11. That's going to be a major impact. And that's something that's going to impact us. And I think our vision as a whole is that we want to have people that live here and commute down there. And I think that's already happening now. I mean, we have some people on this.
I do 50 miles one way.
Yeah. So, and I think with the master plan, the general plan that we'll be having, I think it's the gateway to bringing people to Superior, and hopefully that we have some visionaries. And I know I'm not going to do it in 40, 20 years, possibly. I may be, but I'm not going to be sitting right here. So, yeah, I think that in the whole, I'm not speaking for the whole group, but me personally, I think that I understand what you're saying, and the point was well taken.
One of the things I would mention too is the document does say it's a living document, and there's going to be things that change rapidly, or things that we expected to happen that do not happen. The mine EIS still has not been approved. That is a big if-then statement for the future of our community. If it is approved, it goes one way. If it isn't, it goes the other way. So this document may have to be adjusted on a fairly regular basis if big things happen. And you know, if the I-11 corridor goes through and we get a bunch of development in the state land properties at Florence Junction, or a big development goes in there, we will have to readdress this. So it is by definition generalized, right? So it tries to account for as many possibilities as possible. But that doesn't mean that if something unexpected happens, we can't come back and start all over again.
I got a question, Matt.
Yes.
A lot of the questions that everybody's asking here on potential growth, if the mine goes through or what have you, the environmental impact statement, like City Manager Todd spoke about, there was a 4 or 5 year extensive study that was conducted in the area pertaining onto what's going to happen within the town, whether we're talking about heavy industrial traffic, water, air, transportation, everything's there, the studies are there. So these were done by experts, okay, over a 4 or 5 year time span. A lot of the questions that we've asked, they're answered in that document, whether we're pertaining to when you spoke about the development over in the west east valley, primarily.
I'm talking about Pinal County.
Yeah.
I don't deal with the valley whatsoever.
No, I'm talking about Superstition Vistas area, all that area coming this way. It's projected in 20 to 25 years that could be 1.25 million people.
Yes.
So that growth is going to be there. Yeah, I mean, it's growing and it's coming. And a lot of that has already been answered. But like everything else, it can change in 5 years. You know, something could happen and just stunt the growth or even expand it even more. But a lot of our answers are in the FEIS that has been put on hold. But if anybody takes the time to look at that document, it's a big document, but it covers everything, land, air, and water, and it's all there. But just for knowledge for the public.
It's another document that has a lot of if-then statements in it, though. It has, you know, if it opens and nobody moves to town because they all live in Sandton.
Yeah, it's there.
There's a lot of unanswered questions in that one as well. That even if the EIS were approved, even if the mine opened, we would still have to modify this document on an ongoing basis.
Yeah, definitely. You know, anything can change. Tomorrow it can change. You know.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, I'll close the call to the public. Do we want to?
Can I make a motion?
Do we want to make a motion?
I wish to make a motion to approve the general plan as we see it.
A motion made by Hank to approve
Second is
resolution number 2022-02, seconded made by Jess to approve, motion made to approve resolution number 2022-02. We'll take a vote. Henry?
I approve.
Hank?
Aye.
A yes by Henry, a yes by Hank. Sherry?
Aye.
Sherry Cordova voted yes. Jess?
yes.
Yes by Jess. David?
No.
No by David Gunn. Julie?
Yes.
Yes by vote by Roy Evelyn, and a yes vote from Matt Nashville.
God, you override me again?
Motion carries to accept resolution 2022-02.
Recording stopped.
Okay, number 2, discussion, possible approval of plans for relocation of manufactured homes from Old Superior High School to 379 North Erie Avenue, Superior, Arizona. Is that the manufactured home at the high school right now? Okay.
To clarify the need for review by council, the mobile home is older than 10 years old. Based on the last revision of the code, it doesn't say you can't approve it. It just says if there's an older mobile home, it has to come to planning and zoning for design review. With that in mind, we have provided you pictures of the existing structure so you can gauge whether it will fit into the community. And you just have to review it on its merits and make your judgment. We do have the owner here if you have any questions about the structure
Is the
itself.
destination in the overlay district?
Yes.
I've got a question, Todd. You said, because I know we had that ordinance about the 10-year thing. Can you expand on that again? Why
Yeah.
can we do that? Why can we not? How can we overcome that? How we do that?
It says that if the design review is submitted, if there's any item on one of 3 items that doesn't allow for an administrative review, it has to come to planning and zoning for review, and you can still choose to approve it.
So we're not gonna open up Pandora's box here, are we? Because we went through a lot of this already.
The entire intent of that rule is that anything under 10 years gets an automatic approval. That doesn't mean that anything older can't get an approval. Anything before 1976 would have to have a certificate saying that it's been brought up to current specs, but this is not an ancient unit. It still meets current standards. It's just older than 10 years. And like I said, if it doesn't significantly meet the design standards for the neighborhood, you can choose not to approve it. I personally think with if I were giving a staff recommendation, I think that diverse housing is part of our general plan we just approved, and the cost of new construction and new homes in this town have gone incredibly high, very fast. So if we want young families and lower income people to have a place to move to in our community, we're going to have to maintain a fairly flexible view of these sort of things and make opportunities available where it makes sense.
I don't disagree with that at all. And I know the home is in very good condition. I've actually seen it. I haven't been in it, but I've seen it from the outside. But what I'm saying about opening up a Pandora's box, who decides whether, it may be older than 10 years, who makes that determination that it's in a good standard? Is there an engineer here, or how does that work? Is that objective, or is that an official review? How does that work?
It's you as a commission make that judgment. That's why it comes to this commission for that ruling. You have the ability to use your judgment to determine that it's acceptable and to approve it.
I think the stamp on it is what, 2016? Is it 2016 or 2014? I think the stamp that's on the chassis.
The owner can answer you those questions. I took the pictures of the plats.
I could hardly read it. I saw that.
The manufactured home itself, I think, Elijah, 1983 or 1984, correct? Mr. Elijah?
It was made, it was new in 2005. So it's 15 years old.
Oh, okay.
I just want to, are you done? Go ahead.
Well, no, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I took a ride over there up to Neri. It's on the top end. And on the corner, where the Otones live, up there, there's a couple of trailers there that have already been there. They're probably 1970s or what have you. There's 2. And I looked at the lot and you're fixing it up. I guess you're knocking down the house next to it also, or are you going to refurbish that?
Yes.
You're going to refurbish or knock down?
No, it's going to be new construction.
New house.
The houses next to it?
The immediately to the south.
Yeah.
The house is being demolished.
Yeah.
There will be a new house built.
Oh, okay.
The owner is Paula De La Rosa. Yesterday she got the zoning clearance letter for demolition of the garage and the existing building. She has an architect. Mr. Elijah is helping to her with an architectural plans. There, I guess that's his friend. She's gonna submit those plans to Pinell County for.
So it's gonna be a rental? The trailer's gonna be a rental, or you're gonna live in it, or?
No. May I?
Yes, go ahead.
I purchased the lot with the old house on it, and that lot number is 369. the address is
Yeah.
369. And I have a gentleman that I work with. I hope y'all have a chance to meet him, Uriel De La Rosa. And I gave that lot to him. And he is going to build a new house from ground up, cement floor.
Sure.
And on lot 269. It's a little bit wider. I think it's 80 feet frontage instead of the regular 50 feet of frontage. And I would like to move this modular home to 379. And that's in between, that's a vacant lot in between the house that we restored. Actually, that's a little bit of a misstatement. It was more than restored. We actually, built new inside.
Yeah.
But that's 389. And so there'll be we would like to see a brand new house built new on 369. We'd like to have the the manufactured home on 379. And then we have the restored house on 389. And then across the street is 354, and that's a house that we restored years and years ago. It's an original build in Superior.
Well, I can tell you right now, I went up there too. Well, first, a couple things on what was presented by your team. It's probably the best document I've seen, and in your preparation and all the information, the engineering drawings. I mean, I don't think as a commissioner I can ask for anymore. Sometimes people show up and it's bits and pieces, and we have to like pulling teeth. And I did look at the site, and I like the way you've done the site prep. I've seen the house that you're talking about on the south side of that particular site. And I've always wondered who remodeled that house across the street. And that's a beautiful remodel, whatever you did there. It's really stunning. I haven't been inside it, but that's very stunning. But
It's very nice.
yeah, and I kind of look at that. I think hopefully if we accept this, it's kind of, for me, it's almost like I'm not saying it's totally 100%, but I feel like it sets a template for what we're talking about infill, making some minor adjustments, and acceptance. We're older. I don't know how much older, but if we're going to show a model of how to do it, I think you kind of give us a good baseline how to do that. So I really appreciate all the effort you put into that and your site prep.
Any other questions? Yes? Any questions, Rita?
No.
Okay.
Not at this time.
Do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Okay, motion made by Hank to approve relocation of manufactured home. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Henry. Okay, anyone else, how do you vote?
Yay.
Yay. Hank, how do you vote? Yay. Yay by Hank and Henry. Sherry Fedor? Okay, yes vote by Sherry. Yes?
Yes.
All right, and yes vote by Jessica Garcia. David Gunn?
Yes.
Yes vote by David Gunn. Joy Evelyn?
Yes.
Yes vote by Joy Evelyn, and a yes vote by Matt Nash. A motion carries to approve the relocation of manufactured home.
Congratulations.
And thank you for investing into Superior.
Thank you.
Hey, it's great to be here.
We agree.
We agree.
Okay. May I say something?
Sure.
There was a little meeting here a day or two ago at the high school, and I was so flustered over what Rusty Bauer said that I kind of wasn't thinking straight. But I would like to set the record straight. this gentleman right over here is a prince. And
Wear the crown, bud.
He's what?
and I can tell you that he was, in fact, instrumental in arranging what's happened with the high school. And hey, we're all in this together, and
How about a applause for Tom?
and that should have been said two or 3 days ago.
Thank you.
You know,
Thank you.
my country would say, thank you is good, luck is
Well, Ezra, what he really wants is for you to call his wife and tell her that he's a prince.
It's a good time as for the race.
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Motion made by Joy to adjourn, I hear a second.
Second?
Seconded by Hank. Henry, I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries to adjourn the planning and zoning meeting.
Prince Pat. I'm gonna call it PP.
Oh.